You think your boat is safe. Stainless steel rigging, bronze hardware, all called lifetime parts. But right now, somewhere below deck, a silent clock is running out. Most owners discover this the hard way. A lifeline that snaps when you lean, a mast that falls backwards, an insurance claim denied because you trusted metal that quietly expired after 10 years. Science and underwriters both know the truth. These so-called immortal parts hide rust, fatigue, and chemical rot with perfect smiles, until the day they fail without warning. Which piece is already counting down to disaster on your own boat? The first overlooked flaw is weighting. A lifeline should save you, not send you overboard. Yet the most common sight on older boats is a vinyl-coated wire stretched along the deck, white, clean, reassuring. Under that plastic, water seeps in and stays trapped. Out of sight, the stainless wire core rusts year by year, hidden from every inspection. It looks perfect until the moment you need it. Surveyors have logged case after case. An owner leans back, trusting the rail, and the wire parts with a sharp snap. Suddenly, it is a man overboard, not just a broken fence. The fix is simple and proven. Ditch the vinyl. Use bare stainless, or, better yet, upgrade to Dyneema, a modern synthetic line that does not rust and lasts longer in the sun. For around $200, you replace a silent risk with real security. Lifelines do not give warnings. If yours are older than 7 years and still wearing their plastic skins, you are gambling every time you step on deck. The Forestay is the single wire that holds your mast up from the front. Nearly every modern cruising boat wraps it in a roller furler, a clever device that lets you roll up your headsail in seconds. But that convenience comes at a cost. The furler turns the Forestay into a black box. Salt, rain, and vibration work on the wire, but you never see it. Every tack, every gust, every hour at anchor, the Forestay flexes and strains, hidden from view. Surveyors have documented what happens when that wire gives up. The mast does not just topple over the side, it falls straight back, crashing into the cockpit, sometimes with crew underneath. Field reports show masts dropping backwards in a split second, flattening biminis and smashing steering wheels. The only way to know the condition of your Forestay is to remove the furler and inspect the wire from one end to the other. If it has been on for 10 years or more, you are not sailing, you are guessing. Make it a habit. Drop the furler every decade before the mast comes down for you. Every piece of standing rigging ends in a swage fitting, a metal sleeve crimped onto the wire. It looks flawless, polished, and strong. But inside, the story is different. Years of flexing and tension work hardened the stainless steel, setting off a chain reaction. Micro cracks begin at the swage, invisible to the naked eye. Over time, these cracks grow, one load cycle at a time, until the wire lets go with no warning. Surveyors have seen it countless times. The rig stands tall one day, and the next, the mast is down, torn free at the swage. Insurance. Underwriters have no patience for guesswork. If your rigging is older than 15 years and you cannot produce a dated invoice, the policy will not cover a dismasting. No receipt, no payout. We know the math. The science backs them up. Fatigue triples after a decade. Drop the mast every 10 years, inspect every swage with dye, and keep the paperwork. A $5,000 rig replacement is cheap compared to a total loss. Stainless steel survives at sea by wearing an invisible skin, a thin layer of chromium oxide that forms when the metal meets fresh air. That layer is what keeps rust at bay. But bury stainless inside a chain plate, a swage, or a keel bolt, and the oxygen disappears. The protective film cannot heal. Salt water sneaks in, the chemistry changes, and the metal starts rotting from the inside out. This is called crevice corrosion, or as surveyors call it, oxygen starvation. It is silent, it is invisible, and it is why so many so-called lifetime parts die right on schedule. You cannot spot these failures with a flashlight. The outside stays shiny while the inside is dissolving into pits and cracks. That is why every professional surveyor uses the DIE penetrant test. The process is simple. Spray on a red dye, wipe away the excess, then cover the area with white developer. Wait a few minutes. If there is a hidden crack, the dye seeps in and bleeds out as a sharp line. Micro cracks at a swage fitting, pitting in a chain plate, even hairline flaws in a prop shaft, they all light up. Surveyor's rule: if the dye shows a line, that part is done. Replace it, no questions asked. For bolts and other buried metal, pros turn to non-destructive testing, eddy current, magnetic particle, or even X-ray. These tools see through the shine, catching pits and voids before they become disasters. Insurers know the numbers. Internal pitting can eat through half the metal in a decade underwater. After 10 years, every buried fitting is a suspect. The science is blunt. If stainless cannot breathe, it cannot survive. The only defense is to inspect, test, and replace before the clock runs out. Down in the engine room, there is a part that gets no respect until it fails: the exhaust elbow. Every diesel has one, a cast iron or stainless bend where hot exhaust gas meets cold seawater. The chemistry is brutal. Salt water cools the exhaust, and it also starts a slow attack on the metal from the inside. Carbon builds up, trapping moisture against the walls. Over time, rust eats its way through from within. You will not see it coming. There is no warning on the outside, just a layer of soot and maybe a little heat discoloration. But inside, a hole is forming. When the elbow finally gives out, it is not just a mess. Seawater floods straight into the engine cylinders. If the engine is running, you get a hydraulic lock, a sudden stop that can bend rods and crack blocks. If the boat is at rest, water can backflow into the boat itself, filling the bilge and turning a quiet night at anchor into a scramble for the manual bilge pump. Some failures go the other way, leaking exhaust gas into the cabin. Carbon monoxide is odorless and deadly. There are cases on record. Yanmar, Volvo, and Westerbeker have all issued bulletins where a failed elbow sent crews to the hospital with carbon monoxide poisoning or nearly sank the boat outright. The fix is routine, but it is not optional. Replace the elbow every 5 to 7 years, no matter how it looks on the outside. The part costs a few $100s. The cost of ignoring it is an engine rebuild or a flooded hull, $10,000 or worse. No mechanic worth his salt trusts an old elbow. If you cannot remember when yours was last changed, pull it now. Do not wait for the day you turn the key and the engine will not crank. Or worse, when you hear water sloshing in the bilge and realize you are already losing the fight. A Cutless bearing is a simple thing, just a rubber sleeve pressed inside a metal shell. It holds the spinning propeller shaft steady as it passes through the hull. Most owners ignore it until the engine starts to vibrate, just a little at first. That wobble is the start of a chain reaction. As the rubber wears and the clearance grows, the shaft no longer runs true. It hammers against the bearing and then the transmission seal. That seal gives up and seawater starts to trickle in, slowly at first, then faster as the shaft log wears out. In a storm, the vibration gets worse. The engine strains, the shaft flexes, and the keyway under the propeller, where a small slot holds the prop in place, becomes a perfect pocket for trapped salt water. Oxygen cannot get in, so Crevice Corrosion sets to work. Stainless steel that looked perfect last season can pit and weaken in just a few years. Surveyors have found shafts eaten halfway through, the metal under the keyway turned to black mush. In heavy weather, that is where the shaft snaps, inside the propeller hub, leaving you dead in the water, or worse, with a spinning shaft punching a hole through the hull. Techs use a dial indicator to check shaft run out. Anything more than a hair's width means the bearing is shot. The fix is simple. Pull the shaft and replace the bearing every 10 years, or sooner if you feel a thump or see black streaks in the bilge. The part costs less than $200. The cost of waiting is a flooded engine room, a ruined transmission, or a rescue call that starts at $20,000. Neglect the bearing and the ocean will find its way in every time. Steering feels solid until the moment it does not. Deep inside the hull, the rudder stock, a thick stainless steel shaft, rotates quietly in its tube, surrounded by seawater that never moves. This is the wet stagnation zone, the perfect breeding ground for crevice corrosion. Stainless steel needs oxygen to keep its protective skin alive, but trapped in that dark, damp tunnel, the metal starts to pit and rot from the inside. The outside stays smooth, but inside the stock is turning brittle, eaten away one pinhole at a time. Surveyors have opened rudder tubes and found shafts pitted halfway through after just 10 years. The first warning is often a subtle play at the wheel, a few extra degrees of slop, a faint clunk. Ignore it. And the next sign is the stock snapping under load, leaving the rudder floating free and the helm spinning useless. Loss of steering at sea is more than an inconvenience. It is the start of panic, distress calls, and in some cases, abandonment. The fix is clear. Pull the rudder every 10 years, inspect for pitting, and replace if there is any doubt. A $2,000 shaft is a bargain compared to a lost boat. Cheap brass through hulls and seacocks are a ticking clock under the waterline. In salt water, the zinc in these fittings leaches out, leaving behind a pink, brittle shell that looks more like a carrot than a metal part. This is dezincification, selective leaching that turns solid metal into spongy copper. It happens quietly, often in less than 10 years, especially with hardware store brass instead of proper marine bronze. The danger is not just theory. Surveyors have found pink crumbling valves on boats that were supposedly ready for sea. The test is brutally simple. Take a hammer and tap the fitting. A healthy marine bronze valve rings clear and sharp. A dezincified one gives a dull thud, or worse, it cracks or crumbles right in your hand. That sound is your warning. If you hear a thud or see pink metal, replace the fitting with certified marine bronze. The part costs $100. The cost of a failed Seacock is a flooded boat and a salvage bill you will never forget. Do not trust the color, trust the ring. Keel bolts are the only thing holding thousands of pounds of lead to the bottom of your boat. Most owners see a row of nuts in the bilge and assume all is well. The real danger lies hidden deep inside the joint where the keel meets the hull. If the seal at this joint fails, salt water creeps in along the bolts, starving the stainless steel of oxygen. Inside that dark crevice, the metal begins to rot. This is crevice corrosion at its worst. The outside stays shiny, but the core turns to mush. Surveyors look for weeping or rusty streaks at the nuts, an early warning that the joint is leaking. But even then, the only way to know is to X-ray the bolts or pull one for inspection. Ignore it, and the consequences are brutal. In 2014, the cheeky Rafiki capsized in the Atlantic when its keel dropped clean off. The MAIB found the bolts had corroded nearly in half, invisible from above. 4 sailors lost their lives. A $3,000 X-ray or bolt pull could have saved the boat and their lives. This is not theory. If your keel bolts are over 15 years old, you are gambling with the spine of your boat. Schedule a non-destructive test and do not trust the shine. The ocean will not care about your receipts when the keel lets go. Boat builders in the 1980s and the 1990s thought they were solving a problem when they foamed fuel tanks in place. The logic was simple: lock the tank tight, stop it from shifting, and keep it quiet under the floorboards. But foam traps water like a sponge. Any leak, condensation, or even a damp bilge means moisture is held right against the metal year after year. Aluminum tanks pit and blister from the outside in, while iron tanks rust from the inside out. The process is slow, silent, and completely invisible until the damage is done. Surveyors tap along the tank and hear soft spots where metal has thinned to paper. Sometimes they find black sludge or powder in the fuel filter, evidence that the tank is dissolving from within. Owners are often shocked. The tank looks fine from above, but underneath it is a moonscape of corrosion. These tanks rarely make it past 20 or 30 years. No amount of polish or fuel additive can save a tank once the ROT takes hold. The only warning is a whiff of diesel in the bilge or a persistent engine sputter. By then, the clock has already run out. A failed fuel tank is not just a repair, it is a financial cliff. The average yard quote to replace a foamed-in tank lands between $15,000 and $20,000. On a $40,000 boat, that is half the vessel's value gone in a single job. The process is brutal. The interior must be torn apart or the engine pulled entirely. Most owners face a grim reality. They either spend more than the boat is worth or walk away and let it rot. This is why so many late 80s and 90s boats end up abandoned in the yard. Engines still good, sails still crisp, but the tank has turned to powder and the math does not work. Insurance will not cover it. Brokers warn buyers to check the tank age before making an offer. The fix is prevention. Replace the tank before it leaks, keep every receipt, and demand proof of replacement when shopping for a used boat. If the tank is original and the boat is pushing 30, you are not buying a bargain. You are inheriting a time bomb. The checklist is simple. Inspect, document, and budget for replacement long before the smell of diesel or rust in the bilge becomes your only warning. Right now, more than half the sailboats on the water have at least one critical part past its safe age, unseen but measurable. Insurance companies know the data, and so should you. Preventative maintenance isn't paranoia. It's the difference between control and catastrophe. On the ocean, the only real guarantee is the work you do before you cast off. Thanks for watching. Stay vigilant and stay afloat.